Across the United States, some towns were not slowly abandoned. They were emptied in a short period of time. People left their homes and belongings behind. In this video, we're looking at 6 real places in the United States that were completely abandoned after specific events forced people to leave. The first location is a town that was erased after a chemical disaster. Times Beach was once a small working-class town outside St. Louis. It had families, schools, and a growing population. In the early 1970s, the town began using chemical waste to control dust on its roads. What residents didn't know was that the substance contained extremely high levels of dioxin. Over time, people started getting sick. Animals died. The contamination spread through the soil and into homes. Eventually, the federal government stepped in. Residents were forced to leave, and the town was completely evacuated. Times Beach no longer exists as a town. The land was sealed, the buildings were removed, and its name was erased from the map. But Times Beach was not the only place where contamination made life impossible. In another town, the damage was even more visible, and it spread far beyond the ground beneath people's feet. Picher was once a thriving mining town in northeastern Oklahoma. For decades, lead and zinc mining sustained the local economy, but what remained after the mining stopped was a landscape filled with toxic waste. Massive piles of mine tailings surrounded the town, slowly releasing heavy metals into the air and soil. Children were exposed to dangerous levels of lead. Health problems became widespread. Sinkholes opened beneath homes as underground tunnels collapsed. Over time, the town became unsafe to inhabit. The federal government declared it a disaster area and began relocating residents. By the early 2000s, Picher was almost completely empty. What had once been a working town was left contaminated and unstable. But not every abandoned town was destroyed by pollution. Some were slowly weakened by nature itself, until collapse became inevitable. Cahaba was Alabama's first state capital. In the early 1800s, it was expected to become a major political and economic center. But the town was built in a low-lying area between rivers. Seasonal flooding was constant, turning streets into swamps and spreading disease. Malaria and yellow fever became common. Infrastructure failed, and the capital was eventually moved elsewhere. As the population declined, Cahaba never recovered. By the end of the 19th century, most residents had left. Today, only ruins remain. Nature has reclaimed the land, covering what was once a functioning town. But not every abandoned place was worn down slowly by water and time. Some collapsed because an industry that sustained them disappeared almost overnight. Kennecott was not a town built to last. It existed for one purpose: copper. In the early 20th century, massive copper deposits turned this remote area of Alaska into an industrial hub. Entire facilities were constructed around the mine, including housing, power plants, and transport systems. For decades, the operation was highly profitable. But as the ore began to run out, the cost of extraction increased. In 1938, the mine was shut down. Within days, workers left, equipment was abandoned, and the town was effectively empty. Unlike places that declined slowly, Kennecott was left behind almost instantly. A functioning industrial city became a frozen shell. And while Kennecott collapsed because its resources were exhausted, other towns were abandoned not because something ended, but because something dangerous remained. Centralia was once a normal mining town. Families lived here, children went to school, and businesses depended on coal. In 1962, a fire started beneath the town. It ignited an underground coal seam. The fire never stopped. Toxic gases rose through the ground. Sinkholes opened without warning. Entire streets became unstable. For decades, authorities tried to contain it. They failed. The town was evacuated, homes were demolished. Centralia was erased from maps. But the fire is still burning, and it is expected to continue for decades. Some places are abandoned because people can no longer stay. Others are abandoned because staying becomes impossible. Garnet was not erased by contamination, disaster, or evacuation. It was abandoned because the reason it existed simply ended. Founded during the gold rush, Garnet grew fast. At its peak, it had hotels, stores, saloons, and hundreds of residents. But when the gold ran out, people left. Jobs disappeared, businesses closed, and the town emptied. Unlike other abandoned places, Garnet was never destroyed. It was left behind almost intact. Buildings still stand. Objects remain where they were last used. What makes Garnet unsettling is not what happened there. It is what didn't. No disaster, no warning, just abandonment. These 6 places were abandoned for very different reasons, but all of them share the same ending. Once people leave, a place never truly comes back.